We've been talking about it. Game changer this week for Venezuelans in South Florida and across the U.S. Temporary protected status that allows them and those eligible to live and work legally without fear of deportation.
And late this week, I talked about it with Carlos Vecchio, the ambassador to the U.S. for opposition leader Juan Guaido, widely recognized as Venezuela's interim president. Ambassador, on Monday, the Biden administration, obviously, as we know, declared TPS for Venezuelans in this country, about 320,000. How big is this? How important?
Now, this is a very important decision taken by the Biden administration. We thank President Biden for granting TPS for Venezuelans. This will alleviate the situation of Venezuelans here in the U.S. This measure will benefit at least close to 3,000 Venezuelans in the U.S. and will allow them to stay here legally. They will be able to work and they will avoid deportation. So this will create certainty to the Venezuelan diaspora to handle the situation here in the U.S., but at the same time, in a moment which is quite complicated, which is the pandemic. So this measure came in the right time, in the right moment.
Yeah. Ambassador, it seems to me, obviously not as a Venezuelan, as an American, but there's some ambivalence about this, I would imagine, for you, for Venezuelans. Yes, it's a welcome humanitarian gesture. At the same time, it's a reminder that the regime of Nicolas Maduro is still in power.
I don't see it that way. I think this is a recognition of the reality that we are facing. From the humanitarian point of view, and this is a decision that will alleviate that situation. But at the same time, the Biden administration has sent clear messages against the Maduro regime, and they have said clearly that we need to find a political solution, which is a democratic transition, and that they will put all the pressure in order to achieve it as soon as possible. So I think we can work together at the same time. But also, it is important to highlight that the diaspora here in Venezuela, with this protection, now will be more stable in order to help us to raise the voice in favor of the Venezuela and to bring more people, congressmen, senators, and the institution of the United States to put more pressure to find a political solution in Venezuela.
Well, is the political solution, does it remain Juan Guaido and the opposition? Because the Maduro government has given no indication that it's really going to negotiate with them or with anybody else.
Well, he's a dictator. We need to push for a transition in Venezuela. We need to increase the level of pressure, not only from abroad, but also internally. And we are not facing only Nicolas Maduro. I mean, this situation has become more complicated because we are dealing with a criminal organization in power, which is allied with the ELN, the dissidents from FARC, and also because has been supported by Cuba, Russia, and China. And for that, we need to keep, the unity inside, but at the same time, we will need the support of the international community to force for a negotiation, for effective negotiation that can lead us for a transition and to call for a presidential election in Venezuela as soon as possible.
Yes. Well, we know that the United Nations estimates 94% of Venezuelans live in poverty. I mean, there is hardly access to adequate food and water, medical supplies. And now I read that there is a shortage of diesel fuel in Venezuela, and trucks are lined up for miles, and all the good services, food that they would deliver, they're not being able to deliver it. So it's one more terrible strike against the people of Venezuela.
Absolutely. I mean, we are facing the worst humanitarian crisis in the last 100 years in this hemisphere. And this is a man-made disaster created by Maduro. That's why we have been saying that we need to work in more humanitarian aid to Venezuela. But that won't be enough. The real solution, the real help for Venezuelans is just providing for a transition, putting pressure in order to force a transition, a democratic transition, as soon as possible in our country. So we need to keep that in mind. And this measure of the TPS, tells you, how the situation in Venezuela is, how complicated it is. And that's why we got this protection for the Venezuelans right here. But again, The important thing is keeping the focus. It's just force for a transition in Venezuela because that's the best humanitarian aid that we can provide to Venezuela.
Yeah. Ambassador Vecchio, Juan Guaido burst on the scene 2018, 2019. There was a moment where it looked like he was going to democratically become the legitimate elected president of Venezuela. Where does it stand now? Because Mr. Guaido honestly seems to be at an impasse, not moving forward, not moving back. I mean, this just seems to be in stasis.
You know, as I said to you, Juan Guaido as an interim president is there, no, because somebody put him there. It's because our constitution is so clear that it says that when you don't have a legitimate president, which is the case, Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela, the president of the National Assembly had to take that position, and that's what he did. And as I said to you at the beginning, this has become more complex due to the real nature of this regime, and because we are not facing only Maduro, we are facing China, we are facing Russia, we are facing Cuba, we are facing, a terrorist group inside of Venezuela. And that's why we have said so clear that we cannot do it alone. We need the support of the international community, but we are there, and we will keep, united the people of Venezuela to move forward. And one thing which is very important in my view, more than 85% of the people of Venezuela are looking for a change. They want a change, and that is there. Is the majority of the Venezuelans who want to have a transition in our country. So we need to create the mechanisms, the channels, in order to help the Venezuelans to express freely as soon as possible.
Yeah, we understand, Ambassador. The United States, both the Trump administration, now the Biden administration, has been imposing economic sanctions on individuals within PDVSA, within the government, and other business people who we believe, the government believes, have acted deceitfully, criminally, and so the pressure is on. But in some ways, it seems the people really paying the price are the Venezuelan people. They can't get the food, the medicine, their currency is really almost worthless. So the pressure the United States and others are putting on the country, is it working?
The worst sanctions that Venezuela have is Maduro. So we need to get rid of the dictatorship because this disaster was created by Maduro. You can lift all the sanctions today and the problem will remain as it is because all the crisis started long before any sanction was imposed on the Maduro regime. And therefore, the key issue is just lifting the dictatorship. And I think that will be the main focus. And also, we need to keep this in mind. It follows the premises which says that, putting resources in the hand of Maduro will help the Venezuelan people. No, it will feed the elite, the regime. It will be the corrupt people surrounding the regime. So that resources won't go to the people. So in certain way, these sanctions has avoided, that the Maduro regime continues with the looting of our assets inside of Venezuela. Yeah. So again, the main problem of Venezuela is not the sanctions. The main problem is Maduro.
Sí, entiendo. We understand. And would you very briefly, I know we have Venezuelans in South Florida watching. Would you like to say something briefly in Spanish to them?
Yes, I will say to them that this beneficio TPS los va a ayudar a estar legalmente, a trabajar y no ser deportados. Tienen desde el 9 de marzo y 6 meses en adelante para poder aplicar este beneficio. Así que esto es una gran oportunidad para todos ustedes, para que puedan aprovechar este beneficio y puedan estar legalmente y puedan darle estabilidad a su familia.
Yeah, bien dicho. Thank you very much, Ambassador Carlos Vecchio. Hope to see you in South Florida soon.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity.